Okay, so it says that this is being live streamed, but if you guys are here and live with me, if you could just let me know in the chat that you are hearing this, that would be great. Okay, so it says that this is being live streamed, but so that I can hear correctly. Hello, YouTube. Hello, good people. Ah, there's a chat. Hello and welcome. For those who could join live. Hi, Julie Beal. Great to have you. Welcome. Welcome. Hi, I'm Solomon. Welcome. Great to have you. Hey, Jody. Can you guys hear me? You'll have to let me know how the sound is. We'll get started in just a moment. Hey, Delia from California, and well, Dawn Artery, Empress of Light. Thanks for letting me know. And Slay the Renee Way. Hello. Lovely to hear you. Thanks, A2B. All right, cool. Awesome. Love that you guys are here. Thanks for joining live. If you're down to give the video a thumbs up, that would be amazing. Helps the content circulate. We'll get started in just a minute. I want to give others just a minute or two to join us. And then we'll dive in. You guys, where are you joining from? I'm super curious if you want to put in the chat where you all are joining. Lori's in Arizona. Awesome. Thank you for confirming, Angela Morgan. Abby DeWitt. I love that you can catch me live too. That's awesome. Amazing. Okay. Cool. Well, hopefully those who can make it will. If you're down, like I said, to give this a thumbs up, that would be awesome. Close the chat, like the video, come back into the chat. And we'll dive in. ATB's in New Jersey. I'm Solomon's in Sarasota. Abby's in Central Florida. We've got Ontario, Canada, Oregon, Australia, New York, LA, New Mexico, and Liverpool in the house. I love it. Thanks, guys. We got another Arizona from VP Rodriguez. So glad you guys are all able to be here. And several folks from Arizona. Amazing. A few folks from Cali. PNW's in the house. Hey, A. Morrison, you're welcome. So if you guys hang out till the end, I will be doing kind of a live open Q&A about either anything that I have shared or just taking kind of general questions. This particular video is more light worker focused than anything else. Sorry, twin flame focused than anything else. Hey, Valerie, great to have you. So if you've got, twin flame related questions, we'll be doing those. Hawaii. So glad to have you here. Awesome. All right. I'm going to go ahead and dive in. Kylie. Okay. That's what I was waiting on. All right. Let's get into it. So glad you're here, Kylie. Thank you. There's 3 things that I'm going to talk about today. The first is how to work with some of the personal processes of the Aries Union Pathway. And for those of you that don't know what I'm referring to there, I'll kind of give you a little background and some context for that. If you're new to the channel, welcome. But it'll be brief. There will be more in some of the older channeled messages from 2022. So you want to have a look at those. Okay. And I'll also be talking about some collective messages I've received for the Divine Counterpart Twin Flame Collective for 2023 through 27, and how it pertains to the union window energy that we are in right now. The second thing that I'm going to address is what the heck happened to twin flame readings for those in separation, and why they've only been on offer for couples who are coming to the session together, because that's related to this Aries Union Pathway thing. Since last August, I haven't offered those, and I'll talk about kind of what happened with those and where things are kind of headed in my business, and I'll address why there haven't been any channeled messages for the collective, the Divine Counterpart Twin Flame Collective for the year. Because as you know, I put out, I think, 4 last year, and I kind of broke up what was kind of an annual message and did more like a quarterly message for folks. So I'll talk about why there wasn't any message for this year and give you just the guidance I've been given for the year and where things are headed collectively. And then lastly, I'm going to address the Amazon Prime series called Desperately Seeking Soulmate, Escaping Twin Flame Universe. Some of you may have heard of this or seen about it. It was completely off my radar until a couple of friends in the twin flame world brought it to my attention. And so I figured before anyone else brought it to my attention, I would just say what I have to say about it, and just anyone who needs, has questions about it can listen to this video. So let's get into the 3 things. And thanks to everyone who is here. I am going to answer questions at the end. So if you've got questions, stick around. So let's see, back at the new moon in Cancer on July 17th, we're going to kind of back into this. I shared some messages with those of you who are members of my private list, my private email list, that I did not share with the public. And now it is time to share with you guys. So if you're not on the private list, the link for that is below this video in the description box. You can definitely get on the private list and get those kind of updates, because I tend to share things with them that I don't always feel like are quite ready for everyone in the totality of the collective. So I think what I shared then is going to resonate more now. So where divine counterparts are concerned, this is what I shared with them. Clarity is key to unlocking manifestation. Love is a frequency that allows us to manifest quite rapidly. And for those of you who've been activated by love in any capacity, no matter the label of your connection, you're going to find, since this year was a year of rapid manifestation, you're going to find that if you've been able to stay in a state of love, this thing started to move into form very quickly in your world. There is a higher influx of light cascading through the human heart grid as of 2023, thanks to the work of a lot of the gatekeepers and grid workers over the last several years. And this has been deepening a lot of compassion for human suffering and supporting us to find personal ways to ameliorate human suffering for the collective. This has also activated amplified magnetic resonance for manifestations to come into form very rapidly. So it's like the minute you think it, the magnetism is already in the atmosphere around you for it to show up. Much of the movement happening within counterpartship pairs has been preparatory for service. There have been a lot of relocations, recalibrations, and at that new moon in Cancer, there was the beginning of a washing clean of the slate, whereby you may have memories of the past between you and your counterpart, but the memories won't, quote, feel the same as they once did. The emotional charge is being released from the past as a way to open bandwidth and capacity for the next chapter of service and love. And that actually was going on not just at the new moon in Cancer, but all through the beginning of the year as we had the creation goddess conjunct the South Node. Those of you who've been listening to the twin flame updates from that point, beginning of the year, through about June or July, you'll remember I was saying there's a purging in our relationship structures. And that purging was to clear out bandwidth because they were conjunct through the sign of Libra, our relationship sign. The only way that this process gets stuck is for those who have been rehearsing their pain. And this is what I shared with the folks on the private list. And I put rehearsing in quotes. This would be nursing and nurturing it due to a lack of forgiveness, grudge holding, an inability to release, and a gripping that stopped things from unfolding organically. This purging would get stuck for those still working in control programs due to fear. Fear such as, well, what if we don't come together? Or what if they choose someone else? Or what if they don't change? Or what if I can't change fast enough for them? What if my kids? What if their job? What if the visa? And so forth. When we are working in those kinds of control programs and our behaviors based on fear and our emotions, this is how we get stuck in cycles. And so we talked more directly about fear and breaking free at the full moon in Capricorn. And I took the most salient excerpt from that full moon in Capricorn and just published it on the channel. It's the last published video. And I published that excerpt so that you can understand the available choices from a more empowered place. Now, throughout 2023, many of the old fear and control patterns have continued to be released, much of it through sleep, meditation, and for some, exercise and movement. So it was a very organic process. Still, others may have had procedures to remove toxic emotional stress from the body, that built up in a cellular way, or have been guided to do detoxes to help remove the programming that solidified into cellular structures in the body. I'm even seeing some people move through delayed grief processes now that the year has progressed, where this purging has extended into the second half of the year through delayed grief that's now allowing itself to move through. Overall, there is a detoxification of the heart grid structures that twins are working with. And this has been going on since last year. There's really nothing you need to do to assist it other than your own forgiveness work of self and others. Unless you, of course, have been personally called to work with the grids as a gatekeeper or a grid keeper, the earth grids, the crystal grids, the plasma grids, or otherwise. If you've been called to do that, then you know what you need to do and where you need to be and when. But for the rest of us, our work is in the human heart grid. My guides were explaining to me this morning, they were like, they don't know what grids are, Kay. You have to explain it. So let me just tune in to see how they want to explain this really quick. A grid is a structure of illuminated hearts that have been activated by love and connected to one another through the emotion of love across the earth. To my guidance team, they're explaining that to them, it looks like ley lines, but the ley lines that are elastic because humans are constantly in motion. But the web of connected and unified hearts through love facilitate a taming, there's specifically the word they're using, of the human nature so that it can evolve to operate more from human spirit. Those of us who have been activated by love are essentially guides. They're showing me the yellow lines on the side of the road that keep cars from veering off into ditches. We essentially provide a guidance frequency for the rest of humanity. Okay, so that's the explanation of grids. If you need me to get into it further, we can when we get to the Q&A portion. So they were saying the only work needed for those of us as who work with the human heart grid is to continue our individual releasing and our individual forgiving. And this makes the grid that we're all connected to lighter. As more release and forgive, the capacity to do the same for those who have been stuck gets expanded. Again, much of this is happening through organic processes such as sleep or movement since the start of the year and through last year. Now that we're closing 2023, much of that internal releasing is being revealed on the outside through changes in our third dimension. We did that internal releasing. Now we're releasing a job. We did the internal releasing. Now we're releasing a home that we used to have that was attached to the old situation. We did the internal releasing. Now we're releasing certain connections or ways of communicating that we outgrew a long time ago. What's happening now is our third dimensional reality is just catching up with the interior work we did last year and this year. So that was the message I shared with the private list back in July. Again, recommend you get on the list if you're really guided to get that kind of intel earlier in the year. This year, that detoxification energy has been a necessary part of releasing fear from the experience of love. There's been a neutralization or a reset that's come from the higher realms through the grids to us. With this, I was shown that there are many who have had the experience of identifying as twin flames or attachment to the label or identity of twin flame because of something they read, heard, or saw. And some just because of what they experienced. It just didn't make sense in any other context in terms of the way love activated them. Either they heard, read, or saw something about love that resonated in their spirit, and it was called twin flame on the internet, or they experienced something around love that others or the internet suggested as twin flame. As time has progressed and personal revelation has unfolded, some are now coming into clarity that what they experienced was not actually a twin flame experience. And others are convinced it was a twin flame experience, but because what they experienced was so challenging, they drew conclusions that twin flames must be toxic or not meant to be together or about trauma bonding or steeped in codependency or the delusional experiences of the love-starved in an always on, but not always connected world. So there's been this confusion as many have magnetized to the concept as the top layer, the shiny, sparkly, seems to be about a love like no other, but they don't always have an empowering framework around love in which to integrate the experience of love. And they're coming to the conversation with deep childhood wounds, lots of neglect, no support systems in place for healing those. Now, add to this that there have been twins who have stopped short in their ascension process or their purification process, and they got stuck in cycles of their own grief or their own pain in their connection because they lacked the guidance or the support they needed for themselves to progress. You can see how there can be a lot of convoluted energy in the heart grids of all of us who are interconnected and find ourselves wandering in the world of these labels: twin flame, divine counterpart, soulmates, ascension partners, karmics, false twin, or any other label you can throw at an unparalleled experience of the neurochemistry of love. Now, at the beginning of the year, in my conversations with the divine about this, I kept hearing the phrase over and over again. And I've been sharing this with you throughout the year: all people in their right places. Last year, there was tremendous spiritual detoxification as the planet that I read as the divine feminine energy moved through Pisces for 11 months. Pisces is that last sign, it's the sign of release. This year and next year, the South Node, which acts as a release valve and portal, will be transiting through the sign that governs relationships. That's Libra. This is moving a lot of people forward and off the twin flame identification and conversation, and thus detoxifying and removing some of the convoluted energy from the grids that connect us all. With the direction of growth, the North Node is transiting the sign of Aries, and that governs our individuality, our selfhood, and many are coming into their sovereignty when it comes to love and connection, no longer outsourcing their divine right to know, their divinic structure of divine knowing and intuition, no longer outsourcing that to other people, but instead cultivating that within as the North Node is moving through Aries. Okay. So as these folks who, just had a brush with twin flame experiences, but are coming to terms with, okay, maybe that's not what this was. Maybe it was something else. As those folks exit and detach from the construct, 4 things are happening. Number 1, those of us sensitive to collective energies may be feeling much lighter, as those who have had denser and darker experiences with the concept are releasing their attachment to both the people and the constructs affiliated with the concept twin flame. Number 2, those who are exiting are finding their way to the people and places where they can truly experience love in sovereignty and not feel like victims of love or victims of a one-sided connection through either unresolved limerence, codependency, trauma bonds, or unhealed childhood pain. Many folks are going to find the healing they need through the activation of Aries all this year. They're able to come home to themselves, some for the first time in their lives. And again, when we get to the question and answer portion, if you need me to explain, like, why is she talking about Aries? What's the North Node? What's Libra? Just let me know. I have no problem explaining that. Okay. But I'm trusting that if you're here, you've kept up with the conversation on the channel thus far. But if you're new, welcome. Happy to re-explain. The third thing that's going to happen, as Chiron is rendezvousing with the North Node in Aries this year and next year, it's going to get louder next year. There is tremendous self-acceptance and unconditional love returning to people through grace and through the laws of life. Unconditional love is an energy that is always returned. And the fourth thing that I was shown will be happening is with this, as we get into the closing of 2023 and the opening months of 24, there's going to be a tremendous healing in our masculine energetic fields as our personal directions and ambitions become much clearer. Aries is all about ambition, and it's a personal sign. It's all about our inner self. It's also going to become clearer as our inner guidance systems become more secure, and our personal acceptance of who we really are shapes our lives, from our relationships to our jobs to where we live. This healing in our internal masculine energy fields may have us a little tender and needing some time alone. And this will allow for the willing a balancing and integrating of our masculine energy more fully with our internal feminine energy. With this, we may cry and release at what feels like inappropriate times, while simultaneously feeling stronger, clearer, and more focused than we've ever felt. major healing and breakthroughs in our divine masculine energy fields through the middle of 2024. For those of you in polaric energy of exclusively feminine or exclusively masculine, the masculine counterpart in your pair, you are about to be a whole new person, a more whole version of you. And if separation occurs while this healing is taking place, it's going to be really important to understand it's not personal, and that this healing is going to be catalytic to union later. But this Chiron movement in conjunction with the North Node in the first masculine sign of the zodiac is going to be conducive to very rapid healing. It'll be important to understand it's hard sometimes to hold someone else's hand when we're picking up the pieces of us that may have fallen apart. And this brings me to some changes in my business and work. So this is the second thing I said I would talk about. I'll start with why there are no twin flame readings available for those in separation at this time, and my guidance for my work based on this. The guidance I received last August as this energy came in was to start insisting on union energy, start participating in it as we moved into the peak period of time of this 2-year union window. I've been talking about this last year, this year. I know some of you are new to the channel. This 2-year union window was a once in 7-year meetup between the two planets I read as divine counterparts, Jupiter and his wife Juno in the mythology. When those two come together, and they only do it once every 6 to 8 years, average 7, when those two come together, they facilitate for those who are activated by divine counterpartship love what we call a union window. That energy can be felt 1 year on either side. They came together in January. We would have felt it as early as January of 2022. The energy continues to wane the closer we get to January of 2023. When they come together, they demarcate a period of time that fosters a pathway to union via the energy of the sign they meet in. This time they met in Aries. So this 7-year cycle facilitates union through the sign of Aries. Aries is all about the self, okay? So the guidance I received last August as this energy came in was to start insisting on union energy, to participate in union energy, infuse my field with it as a vibrational conduit for you, to stop participating in separation energy, stop categorizing union as only being in a 3D marriage with a person, and expand subscribers' identification with union energy. My guidance was to stop creating a way for people to talk around their person, spy on their person, talk about their person instead of talking to their person. And this is not in any way an admonition for anyone who wants or needs a synastry reading or who does those at all. If you're guided to go and move in that way, do it. This was just my guidance for me. And given that Aries is the sign of what's personal, this is my personal way of working during this time. Secondly, the union energy of the counterparts meeting in Aries started a new 7-year cycle of the path of union, being through the access point and doorway of Aries, the sign of the self. In other words, if you're a divine counterpart who really feels like your connection has union in it, coming into union with yourself at any point during these 7 years is going to shift the vibrational frequency between you and a counterpart, where that external union with a counterpart opens up through your internal relationship with self. So looking at someone else's chart, walking you through the synastry, that could absolutely be insightful or illuminating or constructive. So if you need resources around that, I am happy to recommend who I would trust astrologically to look at things from a synastry perspective. There's nothing wrong with it at all. I'm just guided to really facilitate an opening and a passageway for those who are ready to double down on that union with self energy through my business. So to be clear, you need a reading, talk about your partner, totally fine. Synastry readings can be helpful, heart opening, they can really help you understand another person. I'm just not guided to provide those at this time. Okay. However, if you are in pair with a counterpart, if you would like me to read for you, that has been available since last August, where if you and your counterpart want to come together and have a conversation with me about how to better understand one another, get on the same page with one another, enhance communication with one another, that's work, union work I can do with a person, with two people in the same room in the same time in that same within that same desire. Okay. At this point, I'm going to be very honest. I don't know if readings for individuals in separation are going to come back next year or if they'll come back at all. I'm really just trying to listen and stay open to how this business wants to evolve through me. I was told at the beginning of opening readings back in 2018 that offering private readings would in fact be a temporary thing for me, and like in totality. So maybe this is the beginning of the end. I don't know. I'm taking it one step at a time and following where love leads me just as much as you all are. Okay. The second change that I was guided to was to start moving away from the label twin flames and really expand the conversation to all who have been initiated by love. You define it your way. Okay. And so there's predominantly because there was so much toxicity in the grid around the concept, in the collective consciousness around the construct twin flame. There has been a lot of collective agreement with separation, running, being broken, something wrong with you or them, toxic family patterns. There's been too much agreement in the collective consciousness around the construct of twin flames with trauma, abuse, heartbreak and heartache, loss, longing, deficiency and unworthiness, and having to earn your love, earn healing, earn union. There's a lot of that in the collective agreement about the construct called twin flames. When we collectively see something in one way, when there's a lot of collective momentum around a construct, these collective ideological agreements keep people trapped in everything that goes with it. If we collectively agree that one group of people are dangerous or criminals or inhuman, the way we treat them in response to that influence who they become in response to the collective paradigm. We see this about the collective agreements we have around men and boys all the time. We don't even realize the way we're unconsciously conditioning them to subvert feelings, suppress emotion. It's woven into the bedrock of how we talk to boys from the moment of their gender discovery. So when it comes to twin flames, those mounting collective conversations in the zeitgeist, as more and more people plugged into the concept, co-created being trapped in cycles of quote unquote healing for a lot of people and never really being able to relax into the abundance of love. They were never really able to relax into love's automatic acceptance, automatic approval, automatic agreement that we're already whole. These collective constructs around twin flames being about earning love or heartbreak and heartache or chasing and running or loss and longing, these things prevented a lot of people from being able to be in the agreement that we're already whole and to really rest in the grace, the mercy, and the forgiveness of love, the drawing togetherness of love, the way love knits people together, the ease, the comfort, and the pleasure of love were very inaccessible through the construct. As more and more people plugged into it and then facilitated agreement with its toxicity. As long as we think we have something to heal, we'll always find something about us and others that are broken. Our minds will create it. And when we haven't found enough to heal in this life, then we start digging into past lives. And none of that is love. So rather than being on a mission to re-educate the collective and fighting with collective agreements, which solidify how our collective experiences render as twin flames or divine counterparts, insert your label here, my guidance was to release my own attachment to the label and just talk to people about love, just talk to people about light. Just talk to people about their creative authority as a divine creator incarnate. Talk to people about love's leadership. And yes, the growth in it, because when you're activated by love, there's definitely tons of growth, but be clear, growth is very different than healing. Healing presumes sickness, brokenness, or woundedness. Growth is the natural process of maturing or becoming more like God, more of our own true self, expansion, and it's expanding to occupy more of who we really are. Love, light, creative authority, leadership, and growth are at the original heart of what it means to be a twin flame. And that was before the phrase got shrouded in the level of darkness it sits in today. My guides have talked to me from the beginning about the importance of love over labels. Whatever your connection is, twin flame, divine counterpart, soulmate, false twin, karmic, ascension partner, labels for it does not come with instructions. It does not come with guarantees. But love itself has a clear path and definitive outcomes. A basic law of life in this realm is that what is sown always comes to harvest, whether you take this biblically, whether you take it from the Quran, whether you take it from the Kabbalion, whether you take it from the Emerald Tablets, the Taoist belief systems, or the Torah. When we sow love, occupy, live in, act from love, we get love. Okay. And this brings me to a little bit more of some energy update stuff around this. And alongside this, there was guidance that I received to keep encouraging you to explore your personalized, individualized path to union. Again, that's what Aries is all about. This was a prompting, and this is why there were no channeled messages for the collective for 2023. Okay. Aries is a very personal sign. It's all about the self. And this is where the counterparts met up this year. And this is the access point to union for the next 7 years. It's going to be a unique process to you and your counterpart. There won't be a collective path that kind of all twins will go through this in 2023. It won't work like that. Not in this cycle. There will be some things that will kind of be general that we can expect to see. Like I definitely see Chiron and the North Node moving through that first masculine sign and providing a healing for our masculine energy this year and next year. But what that healing might look like, what that growth is going to look like, that self-acceptance is going to look like, it's going to be unique to each counterpartship pair. Okay. And so this goes back to what I was saying earlier about, really paying attention to not outsourcing your authority about your connection to other people who may or may not be healed or operating in light in their own connections. This Aries energy thing has people on extremely personalized pathways at this time. So, for example, I know one twin, all of these twins are in leadership in certain ways. Like, you know them, you've seen their work. I know one who's being really called to work on healing generational family issues. I know another who's dealing with mental health stuff with her counterpart. I know another who's starting a coaching business. I know a fourth who's guided to work with a soulmate right now. I know a fifth who's being guided to deal with financial stuff specifically, like to get really concrete and grounded in the third dimension around financial sovereignty. And in my case, there's been a tremendous amount of work that I'm doing around faith and my relationship to God, my roots in my lifetime. As a student of the teacher of the way, we know him as Jesus, but I certainly don't identify as Christian in the form that has been, church shaming and sin sticking people, because his message wasn't about that. It was about love and freedom and liberation. And so my path has included a lot of that reconciling and integration this year more than ever. And so the patterns, these are just the folks in leadership, the folks who are who come into session with me. Like, it's all over the show. Like, some of you need to deal with your third dimensional relationship to your body and no longer be divorced and separated from your personal health and well-being. Others of you need to, again, that financial sovereignty thing, I'm seeing it's huge right now. Really being able to walk into your union without being and needing to be a financial dependent on your counterpart in any way. And still others are really needing to work on like honing, their contribution and their mission and understanding their significance and purpose and where they fit. And still, even others need to deal with like family stuff. Like, they need to get in right relationship with the baby daddy or the baby mama. Like, there's no union until that is settled and in a state of love for the child involved. So it's going to be different for each counterpartship pair. My guidance was to encourage each of you this year to get in touch with your own inner guidance. And for those who really need assistance for where to look, my guidance was to open up my calendar, my space, my time to help you understand the Aries energy in your own chart and how to work with it in your own situation, since that's where the access point to union is over the next 7 years. And of course, if you want to do that, booking link is below this video. But to bring this now completely full circle, I'll address the Amazon Prime series called Desperately Seeking Soulmate, Escaping Twin Flame Universe. 2 people brought that Amazon Prime series to my attention recently, and they were very alarmed. They're both twins who'd been on the path for a number of years, roughly a decade each. And they were alarmed by what they saw being talked about and the way they saw the phrase twin flame being discussed in that video. And they, both of them found the conversation that particular film series or docuseries is having a bit disheartening and running pretty counter to their own experience of love and the connection. So it wasn't on my radar at all. I hadn't heard about it. And I want to be very transparent with you guys. I have not watched it. The first person sent me like a preview, and I got like 40 seconds into the preview, and my stomach began to churn, and my guides were like, turn it off. You don't need to watch this. But the second person who told me about it said that she watched, I guess it's a 3-part docuseries. She watched 1.5 parts of it. And she shared, what her experience of it was. Here's what my guides had to say about it. Conversation, and I'm going to give you the direct kind of verbatim how they said it. Conversations like this will ultimately be constructive for the collective in the long run. For people leaving the experience called twin flame and detaching from labels or fantasies about love, it will be healing for them in their recovery. And for those who are twins, having these people exit the grid will lighten up your experience as well. Again, all people in their right places. Stories about people leaving the twin flame path may continue to be in the zeitgeist as they come to terms with the truth of what they were dealing with. Each person's path will be revealed to them as they are ready. It will be critical to have a relationship with your own inner guidance system, so you are not relying on outsourced mechanisms to help you understand your connection or what to do in it. This is a time of cultivating your inner truth, authority, identity, and clarity. As some people leave, they will have very negative things to say about the construct called twin flame. They will feel the need to demonize it. These are people who will have previously deified the connection. There will be those who remain in the twin flame conversation who will continue to deify the twin flame connection. Demonization and deification are both separation patterns that outsource our power and emphasize our self-victimization. These people at the polar opposites will be loud. Do not let them be louder than you about you and your connection. Stay in places, spaces, and conversations where there is light and the focus is love, not loss, suffering, or sorrow. Especially if you've had difficulty and suffering in your connection, do not touch, leave alone, turn away from conversations that are filled with that energy. It will not create discernment or clarity for you. It will cause more confusion and even evoke bitterness, regret, and jealousy that will pollute your own energy and connection. There will be places, spaces, and conversations where there is light and the focus is on love for those exiting the twin flame conversation and for those staying in it. There will be places, spaces, and conversations that will be filled with suffering, sorrow, loss, and bitterness for those exiting the twin flame conversation and for those staying in it. What will continue to cross your path will be a reflection of what you have your attention on in your own connection and experience, regardless of the label. That's the end of that channeled message. So in conclusion, it's critical to stay vibrationally aligned and centered in the truth of love within yourself. Protect the love in your heart. Protect your peace by being vigilant about what you allow your thoughts to focus on, what you allow your attention to consume. The label twin flame, karmic, false twin, soulmate, ascension partner, etc. None of the labels come with instruction manuals about what you personally are supposed to do or how you personally are supposed to handle your very personal connection. Again, especially now, what happens for you next is going to be unique to your connection. It's going to be individualized. And the way you handle your inner energy and union with yourself is going to be reflected in your connection. It's always been true, but it is especially true now. All right, you guys, that's all I got. I am going to open up for questions that you may have now about what I've shared. I'll take questions for about the next 15 to 20 minutes. If you've got questions for me, for my guidance team, about the collective, about what I've shared, about anything, I'm happy to answer those at this time. Yes, Grandma V, yay, Maine is right. Kansas City, somebody's from Augusta. David Jung says, I'm curious, is there anyone here that more so identifies themselves along the lines of being the divine masculine? I'm sure there are, David. I'm sure there are. There's regardless of the externally identifying gender, I have certainly seen plenty of people who find themselves in the polaric masculine energy in the connection at this time. And there's lots of people on the spectrum with a mix, working feminine and masculine, integrating them in the whole. You're welcome, Chantel DM. You're welcome. So that's all the stuff. Does anybody need me to repeat anything that I shared? Happy to repeat some stuff. If you heard something, you're like, can you go back to that part, K-Moon? Just going to scroll through the comments and see if anyone has any questions. Thank you, Kat Bond, and thank you, Kylie. Appreciate you guys being here. Wonder Woman, please explain the North Node. Happy to do that. Absolutely. Let me pull up a chart that will be supportive to our understanding. Go Magic Astrology app. You can do it. Come on. Oh, of course, the application is now not responding. Let me try again. Great question. Really glad you asked. Okay, great. Let me reshare screen. All right. This was the chart that I used for the new moon in Libra and solar eclipse for the last lunar update I provided for you all. Thank you, Wonder Woman, for this great question. Right here on the chart, you'll see an upside down horseshoe. Looks like this. Okay. And over here on the chart, you'll see an upside down horseshoe. This one that looks like the letter N is the North Node, and this one that looks like the letter U is called the South Node. The nodes of the moon are mathematically sensitive points. I teach a whole class on this called North Node Mastery. It's a part of Star School. But they're mathematically sensitive points that are calculated based on the position of the sun, the earth, the moon, and the way they all kind of fit together. I won't go into the math of it today, but in astrology, they symbolize direction of growth. That's the North Node, where we are growing towards, what our attention needs to be on, and what we've already mastered, what we need to release and or let go of. That's the South Node. They can function like portals, drawing different energies in, depending upon what planets are speaking to them and the type of conversation those planets have. We all have a North and South Node in our chart. I read very differently than other readers. Many will talk about them as nodes of destiny or your life purpose. I do not read them in that way. That's not what I was shown. That's not how they work and what I have been shown. I've been shown that the North Node is the lesson you'll be learning in as long as you're in this body in this lifetime. You'll be getting ever advancing degrees in that particular lesson in your natal chart. But in collective, by transit, the nodes take about 1.5 years to move through a sign. This year, they're moving through the sign of Aries. They move in a clockwise direction because they're moving through Aries this year and next year. The direction of collective growth is all about coming into our selfhood, our individuality, our individual identities, really owning who we are in the way God created us to be. That's what the lesson will be as the North Node transits through Aries. Aries is the first masculine sign of the zodiac. All signs are gendered in astrology, feminine or masculine. As the first masculine sign of the zodiac, it is the sign that I read akin to divine masculine energy. When we see big things going on in the sign of Aries, we understand that there's movement in the divine masculine energetic fields. Okay. The tremendous movement at this time is an integration of more whole masculine energy, and we're certainly seeing tremendous conversation and movement around that as more men are stepping into conversation collectively around mental health, wholeness, redefining masculinity, taking ownership of the word man or male or masculine and integrating some new definitions for it, expanding it so that we have a way to allow men to be whole human beings here on earth. We're going to see that continue to amplify as planet Chiron here connects with the North Node next year. It's already starting, but there's tremendous integration for masculine energies at this time. Okay. So that's what the North Node is. Fabulous question. Thank you for asking, Wonder Woman. Just going to see if there were any other questions here. I'm going to hang out, see a few more. Oh my gosh, Vibe and Shine, I can't believe you're here. So glad to have you. I know it's late in South Africa. I'm going to just scroll to the end, see if what other questions folks have. Okay. Julie Beal says, amazing as always. Can you review North Node and South Nodes, especially in context of where we are going in terms of standing in our own sovereignty? I think I just did that, Julie Beal, but you let me know if you have like a follow-up question here. Okay. One thing that I think might be helpful just to recontextualize the conversation for everyone new to the channel. In January, so I mentioned this, I've been talking about it all year, but I will just re-show everyone who's new to the channel. In January of this year, the planetary energies I read as divine counterparts met up in the sign of Aries this year. And there they are, Jupiter and his wife, Juno, meeting up here. They do that once every 7 years. The last time was 2015. And so this Aries energy where they're meeting up now indicates where we can find union or how we access the portal or the doorway to union, the gateway to it in this next 7-year cycle. Okay. So that's this right here. Okay. It comes through the Aries union with self access point. And that's why everything is so personal. It's so unique. It's so focused on your individual self. Okay. That's why I keep talking about, really leaning into your own guidance, certainly your creative authority, understanding that your pathway is going to be unique to you and your counterpart. Okay. So wanted to make sure I shared that. Let's come back here. Julie Beal says you did great. Thanks. Good. Let's see. Okay. Valerie says she has to re-listen. Cool. It'll definitely stay up. Heather says, I feel like my twin flame journey is a pathway to healing father wounds and my biological family. Can you speak on this just a sec, please? Absolutely, Heather. One of the things I've noticed about anyone who's been activated by divine love in any capacity, it doesn't matter what label you apply to your connection. Some of you are even getting this just activation of divine love, like straight from source, like God's kind of pulled up with you and like taking you under, its wing and said, look, it's going to be you and me, and I'm going to activate you in love. Don't look for it out there. It's going to be in here. Any activation of divine love, love is an energy that joins together, it knits together, it draws things together, it doesn't break apart, it pulls together. And so where there are breaks in our family systems, right? If there have been, breaks around wounding, etc., love is an energy that will foster the rewriting of those breaks so that people can have a clean slate or wholeness. So interesting. I was listening to a panel of men this morning speak about mental health. And one gentleman on the panel was talking, he was saying, I had to, as I began my process of growth, the word he specifically used was healing. As I began my mental health healing journey, I had to really work through some forgiveness with my father because he was a man who had a son who never had the chance to be a son or loved as a son or have a father. And so I had to give him some grace as I grew, to learn that my father was still yearning to just be a son. I was like, wow, that's deep. And so as you move into your own integration and healing around love, for many, this is going to be a family systems rewrite. It certainly is. In my family, there's been a lot of growth and healing going on in my family. It's been going on for many years now, but I was the one in my family who was activated by divine love, and my parents don't know none of this stuff. They don't understand what's going on here. I don't talk to them about this. But in my holiday card last year, my mother wrote to me, she said, "You're the glue that keeps our family together." It really validated, the way in which I've leaned into love through my connection, because it's that leaning into love that then provides us with grace for our parents, supports us with showing our siblings the path to forgiveness, fosters our own integration of, the past in a way that's neutralized and isn't paining us anymore. So, Heather, that activation isn't, exclusive to family stuff. Just to broaden it for those of you who are twins, some of you are like really seeing that there are like groups of people that you are really guided to help make bridges with. We can certainly see this at this time. There are people certainly on this path activated by divine love, who are watching what's going on in the Middle East right now, and who are saying, hey, I'm not pro this side or pro that side. I'm pro love. I'm pro peace. I'm pro us coming together. Everyone on the other side isn't a demon, right? Like, we have to be willing to sow love where we've been activated by love. So, this kind of thing it's unfolding everywhere. As for some of you, it's in, business or corporate structures. Like, your insights, your contributions in meetings are some of the whole soul things that are keeping companies from like completely being corrupt with their customer bases. Your contributions are the ones that are finding ways for them to be ethical and still make money, right? So we're needed everywhere we are. And family is just one key place. Absolutely. Ashlyn Wood says, thank you, Kay. This was validation for my own guidance. Glad to hear it. Karma wounds, generational. I don't know much about generational karma wounds. The understanding my guidance team has given me about karma is very specific. So I'm not sure if we'd be talking about the same things, Heather. But if you have follow-up questions, definitely put them in the comments or in the chat so that I can speak to them for you. Kiara says, can you talk more about the grids and the ley lines? Sure. So I am not a grid worker, gatekeeper. I don't work on the earth. I'm familiar with that work. There's a resource I will direct you to whose work I really respect when it comes to grid work. Her name is Sandra Walter. She's an ascension guide. I'll just take you briefly to her website for those of you who are guided to look at her work. She puts out a newsletter that she calls the Light Letter, and I just love that. She's creator of something called Ascension Path. So I'm going to share the screen so you can see. But she's very skilled and gifted at understanding these. She does Sunday unity meditations for light workers. And she'll put out kind of these updates around grid work and light work and activation and stuff like that. So you can check her work out. She's extraordinary at what she does, and I consider her to be much more of an expert. But my brief understanding around this in the post 2012 years, excuse me for coughing in y'all's ear, there were a number of people who were guided to literally be in specific places on Earth at specific times with specific crystals to say specific things, to open specific energetic flows on the Earth pathways through the ley lines here on Earth. I wasn't one of them. I've always been more guided to work with the human heart grid, but there's the ley lines in the earth, the energetic flows in earth. There are the energetic grids that surround the earth, the crystalline grids that she talks a lot about those. And then there's the human heart grid. And that's really where my work is, because all of the human hearts are connected. Those who have been activated by divine love, myself, yourself, we function kind of like nodes or bright lights or beacons in that grid system. We emanate, first of all, receive an influx of love, and we radiate that out to all hearts connected to us by proximity and through relationship. And so we operate as an interconnected grid system across the earth. and from a frequency perspective, emit a frequency that really shows people like, okay, this is what it means to walk in love. So that is what I have on that. Can you go over why this cycle is 7 years? Absolutely. So going back to the astrology, so counterparts met up here in Aries. They meet up in a single sign once every 7 years, and that facilitates a cycle. The last time they met up was 2015. The next time they meet up will be 2028. And so it's like end of 2028 going into 2029. So I think it's like November of 2028. So it's almost like 6.5, like 7 years. The last time was 2015. These two planets only come conjunct every 6.5, 6 to 8 years. And that's why a cycle is 7 years. Okay. Great question. When they come together, the sign that they come together in tells us where the access point for union is. This cycle, it's through Aries, the sign of the self, the sign of the personal, the sign of the individual. Great question. Glad you felt comfortable to ask. Demonstration. Demonstration, I don't see your question here, so I'm going to go to EL. How does this North Node transit compare to the last time the nodes were in Libra and Aries? That's a great question. I haven't studied the last time EL, so I'm not going to be able to provide guidance on that at this time. But what I can say from a timing perspective, since this is personal, the best thing you can do is study your own life, EL. And for anyone who's listening, the last time the North Node was in Aries would have been 18 years ago. The last time the North Node would have been Libra would have been 9 years ago. So you want to pay attention to, kind of what was going on in your life then. There may be some thematic repeats of, that lesson, like learning that lesson at a higher octave. Got my undergrad degree in engineering. Now I'm going to get my graduate degree in engineering or my master's degree in engineering, that kind of thing, a higher octave of the previous lesson from your lifetime at those 9 and 18-year intervals, because the nodes take that long to get around the wheel. Sarah asks, how do we best hold the energy and increase our light energy as the divine feminine to lead the connection? Well, firstly, Sarah, it's such a beautiful question. I would say, the guidance that I have been given is really about that homecoming, that integration of all parts of yourself, really getting into some deeper self-acceptance energy of who you are, deeper understanding of why you are the way you are, really getting into a place of not making, fault finding, nitpicking yourself, moving kind of out of, for a lot of people, you've done a lot of healing work. Some of you still have more to go, but for those of you who have done a lot of it, some of the next step is to start to recognize yourself as whole and really start to see your counterpart as whole too, and no longer fault find as somehow, some way being deficient or wounded, or as long as you're looking for something to heal, you're gonna find it. But if you start recognizing wholeness, it will manifest further and further for you in the third dimension. That would be the guidance that, if I could say something like generally to everyone, but it's going to be, again, Sarah, really individual and unique to your connection, how you hold the energy and increase your light. You're going to want to look at what kind of things are going on in your life that have you hang out in darkness in any capacity and begin to turn away. Angela Morgan asks, hey, my North Node is in Sag, yet my counterpart's North Node is Gem. Is there any significance? I've not found, when it comes to union, I've not found it to be so, Angela. No, I have not. Certainly you're growing in ways, and this is true for every divine counterpart pair. You're always going to be growing in ways where you're learning from your witnessing of one another, right? So it's especially true in those kinds of circumstances. For Lady Liberty says, can you elaborate more on creating abundance and the part about becoming financially sovereign before entering a physical reunion? I'm really guided to focus on making big changes in my prosperity. Absolutely. And so there's let me see if I can find it on my YouTube channel. It was probably one of my least watched videos, but probably one of the most important videos I provided for anyone who wants to be in union with someone who identifies as a man. One of the things that I find a lot of people, we're at like a crossroads in humanity when it comes to the relationship and identification around men and masculinity and who they are and what it means. Came on. Let me see about this video. There it is. New share. Desktop one. Okay. So yeah, I published this like over a year ago, based on some stuff my guides were saying to me. I only got like 2.7 thousand views, but I think it's probably one of the most important things that we can understand now, as if you identify as a woman who loves men, if you want to be in union with someone who identifies as a man, having a listen to this is going to go a long way. But essentially, what my guides were saying to me, and not even just them, I was just kind of like, my major in university was sociology. So I've always been a student of the patterns of life and people and movements and groups and how things evolve. But basically, in one generation, for the men who are on Earth as adults right now, in one generation, everything that they could use to define themselves as men disintegrated in their one lifetime. We, for thousands of years, understood men as providers financially, providers of shelter, providers of resources. And most of that was predicated on the subjugation of women, women not being permitted to go out and get jobs or get credit or get loans or own their own homes or even get cars. Like, these kinds of things really only just began to unfold, at least in the Western world, in the 1970s. And in the non-Western world, women are still fighting for this stuff. But in the Western world, we have seen women come to, certainly, I don't want to, I want to be clear. Women still earn less than men by every research study available. And we are making more than we've ever made, with more capacity to move about the earth in freedom than we've ever had. It's not to say that, women's subjugation isn't still happening. I'm saying that there has been such significant improvement that the ways in which women have needed men, have defined what a man could be based on what he could do, has fallen. That identity around, well, a man has to be able to pay for things in order to be a man. It's unreasonable to expect it at this point, specifically because if we look at, the economy, like global economy, earning income, and what men make compared to the cost of goods and how that has shifted in the last 60 years. The concept that a man could financially sustain not only himself, but also another person, and then 2 to 4 children has become an unsustainable reality for the majority of men. Whereas, 60 to 70 years ago, it was not only sustainable, but it was to be expected. That was what a man did. You got a job and you provided. And so as that has come to fall by the wayside, right? Like the earning power and the cost of living, the ratio is not what it used to be for men or women, basically, not for any of us. What it takes to sustain a family is now 2 incomes, not 1. And not only that, for the majority of families, unless you're one of these high net worth individuals. And we know that the 1% is getting like a smaller and smaller group of people because the majority of us don't fit into that category, men included. And so as this has been happening, there's been an invitation on earth at this time to redefine what it means to be a man, redefine what it means to who men are, what they do. The biggest teaching that my guides gave to me was that this redefining of masculinity needs to come from men themselves. This isn't something women can do for them, but there will be an integration of some of what we've understood to be feminine becoming, instead of it being quote unquote feminine, that integration will be about just basically integrating what it means to be human. We've done a lot of dehumanization of men when, we've raised our boys to be tough, brush it off, shrug it off, not have any feelings. Again, going back to that panel that I was listening to this morning, there's like a meme of Michael Jordan kind of crying, like he's this big, tough, National Basketball Association player. And he's one of the most legendary players in, the league and worldwide. But, there was a moment he had when he was inducted, I guess, into the Hall of Fame where, he cried tears of joy. And that experience became a meme that everyone uses to laugh about now and share as little pictures to make fun of. And then, the second time we saw him cry kind of very publicly in that way was at the basketball star Kobe Bryant's funeral. And he provided a eulogy, and he had integrated that to such a degree where he had said, "Oh, I better not cry. I don't want to become a meme again." Like that, a man wouldn't be permitted by the culture, by cultural agreement, to openly weep at the death of someone whom he loved and respected and mentored. Like that's the epitome of what we want to collectively say is, quote, toxic masculinity, but we've all participated in it, women too. And so we are at this crossroads, this point where collectively we are needing to, first of all, let men start defining what it means to be a man for themselves, right? And redefine it. And then secondly, we're also at this point where we, as, if you identify as female, wanting to be in some sort of union, with a masculine person, many of us have gotten the call, the instigation in our own lives. You are going to need to, if you want to do this, given the way the economic landscape has changed, you've got to come into this as a strong financial partner, not a financial dependent. You've got to be able to come into this capable of handling yourself as a partner and not looking for someone to be in that old model. Because recall, in that old model where men, quote unquote, provided all the money and all the resources, this wasn't a model where men acted as ATM machines for women. That was a model in which women were expected to be quiet, stand behind, earn less, and constantly be available for whatever her man wanted, regardless of what it meant or did to her personhood or spirit. That model of subjugation of women and deification of men, it's fallen and falling as we speak. And so here we are collectively in a moment in time where many of us have received this internal prompt, financially, sister, you have to step up. Because he's going to be in a process of redefining. Both of you want to be strong players and contributors and leaders here on earth for both your children and all of those around you in your families. It is necessary for you to get to a place of financial sovereignty as a co-creator and not as someone who needs a provider as a dependent. Okay? So that's, many of you have received that call. And so that's what's going on there. You can have a listen to that video if you're guided to do so to get a little bit more. Valerie says, what's the significance to the solar eclipse being conjunct our natal south node conveniently in 7th house? You mean the transiting south node, Valerie? Oh, you mean personally? You know, I can't answer questions about people's individual charts without seeing the whole chart because there's so many different elements that can go into it. Journey further, I think I answered that for somebody else earlier. Okay. Cool. Yeah, journey further says that they're in the divine feminine energy and the connection. Mars is in Aries. Definitely feel like I need to incorporate more masculine energy, and collectively we all will feel this way. While the North Node is in Aries, that first masculine sign. Crystal Marie, have you seen any patterns or received any guidance from Spirit regarding the Aries Libra axis? And with the North Node in Aries, are you seeing those with heavy fire charts being affected differently at the moment? No. What I have been seeing is how people are being affected is a direct, like absolute, unfailingly honest mirror of their relationship to transformation. This energy with Pluto squaring the nodes has been inviting us all to change, to transform, to really own our power. And so where people have had relationships to power of squeamishness or not wanting to own it, or just imbalanced relationships to power, I've seen a lot of people really struggle, regardless of the nodes or their Aries placements, but where people, feel very comfortable with power in their lives. I'm seeing those people actually be in very strong places right now. Heather Glaze, biological family, we got that. Kylie says, what will be the significance for people who move from various relationship to relationship? Depends, some people are supposed to be doing that based on their light work and leadership. Other people are not. I think that's going to depend. And again, this Aries thing is going to be personal. Okay. Let's see. I'm looking for some new questions here. Solomon says, yeah, wow, my dad never got to be a loved son. Yeah, Wonder Woman. I had no clue of twin flames until I met a masculine that triggered the telepathic connection, as well as intense physical chemistry. The things that have occurred have been so divinely guided. Sure, good. Heather Gibson, great question. Are union windows only when there's an event in Aries? No, these 2-year union windows take place when the counterparts meet up. So I think the next time they meet up is in Sagittarius. I think it's Sagittarius, November of 2028. So it's just whenever they meet up. This particular union window was an Aries union window. So this is why Aries is of such great consequence and significance. Okay. Let's see. Wonder Woman says her person has a new job and is traveling, wondering if he is now a grid worker. Sometimes people travel quite a bit for grid work or like heart grid work, and they don't even realize it, that they're there to provide, kind of light codes for the people around them in those locations. Martha says, I have intrusive and racing thoughts due to mental health issues. How can I counteract that when I'm trying to direct my attention toward positive manifestations? Great question. And that is another thing I'm seeing a lot of at this time, Martha, is people being invited to deal with any mental health challenges that may be affecting their connection. I would say some of the best things you can do is really work with a specialist in neurochemistry to get your neurochemistry balanced. And there's a lot on the internet that talks about, the connection between neurochemistry and the gut and your insulin levels. The racing and intrusive thoughts are something that can absolutely be handled when you have, first of all, also dealt with trauma. If there's any trauma in your background, really calming the nervous system, learning how to provide different signals and input so that your amygdala, your like anterior cingulate gyrus knows that you're safe, and they can regulate that, like, I think it's called the HPA axis, the hypothalamic pituitary axis in your body. I would work with a specialist. I really love, if you don't have tons of cash, I really love the work of Dr. Daniel Amen around this stuff. He's brilliant at helping people regulate neurochemistry. Dr. Daniel Amen. He was a psychiatrist that started to ask the question, like, hey, why do some people, is there like a commonality between the different brains and like different diagnoses? And sure enough, he found that that's him and his wife, Tana. Sure enough, he found that some brains aren't actually, like if you've had either blunt trauma to the head, or if this isn't a good one, like he's looked at the brain scans of people who have Alzheimer's, who have sleep apnea, who have healthy brains, and he's formulated systems, and he talks about these in his books and in his podcast, to help balance out your brain. So if you have anxiety or depression or bipolar, or you have another mental health issue or diagnoses, He, in each of his books, he really goes in depth. ADD, he goes into anxiety. Here's what you can do. Here's the food you can eat, the supplements you can take, and the lifestyle changes you need to make in order to get your brain to function in cooperation for your spiritual expansion. Sometimes I've noticed in the spiritual community, the New Age community, we have a tendency to really over spiritualize biological issues. And so my strong recommendation, Martha, especially given how concrete and third dimensional Aries is as a sign, don't over spiritualize this. Like, really take a look at the neurochemistry. Get what you can get in terms of balancing that neurochemistry in terms of food and supplements and lifestyle together. And then from there, you're going to be able to more easily direct your thoughts toward positive manifestations. So a lot of research done by him, and then also by Dr. Mark Hyman. There was a book Mark Hyman wrote, and he's got a wonderful quiz in it. If you're prone to something called ants, it's a term Mark Hyman came up with called automatic negative thinking. If you're prone to that, there's actually some neurochemicals in the brain that are actually missing. And so you want to figure out if that's your situation, like, okay, what are the neurochemicals that are missing? It's the Ultra Mind Solution. It's that book. You want to get that book. Have a look at the quiz inside, follow the suggestions for what's going on in your brain. Both of those guys create a lot of quizzes for people to take so you can start to work your process at home, regardless of your access to medical care. Okay. Awesome. All right. Thank you, Kat Bond. RL Bright, I do not look for those patterns and natal charts of twin flames. And again, to go back to what I have been talking about at the start of this broadcast, my guidance from the very beginning of my business was to not be about the business of identifying who's a twin, who's not a twin, specifically because there's no instruction manual. Even if I tell you, it can actually truncate a process you might need to be in with someone who's a soulmate or someone who's, a false twin. There's where your heart is, where love is, there are lessons there, there are leadership there, and it will complete on its own when it's time to complete. My guidance was never to get into, I deem you a twin, I deem you not a twin. There are people who can see that in the energetics, and I'm certain there will be someone who will come along who will tell you that they can identify it in your chart. In the energetics, my guides told me that folks who have been shown that they can see it energetically are specifically shown that because those folks also have the mechanic ability for healing. For folks who are twins who are really struggling vibrationally with balancing the energy. And secondarily, their guidance for me was part of being activated by divine love is a return to your divinity templates, your divine cognition, your capacity to know. This is 100% our ability to be more like the gods incarnate that we're told that we are. And so if I start looking around in charts for who's a twin and who's not, it just undermines people's capacity to step into that, to fight for that within themselves. And that's their birthright, their divine knowing. So I don't get into that. Nicole Huggins. So does that mean that people who met and entered relationships during this Aries cycle, especially between the end of 22 and mid 23, are twin flames or divinely guided when there are issues in relation? No, not at all, Nicole. No. What happens during a union window, Nicole, is people are just for those of us who are in connection, who have these kinds of, we're just drawn, the magnetics get a lot louder. And I talk about this in a lot of different videos, but when those magnetics get turned up, you get drawn toward your person or you meet your person, that's your call to start doing the work to release everything that stands in between you and love. Okay. Hey, Catherine. Okay. EL, can you speak on the sextile energy and how effort is needed from both DF and DM for union? Yeah, sextiles are really lovely energies of beneficence. They support things come being drawn together, but it takes our human participation to get benefit from sextiles. The magnetics really only work in a sextile when two people are both planets are working together. We have to activate them with our action and behaviors. Lena, how do you understand gratitude for parents? How does it look in practical matters? Lena, that is a great question. I am not sure. I mean, I think there are some really obvious answers. So I'm not sure what's prompting you to ask, but I think everyone's journey with that is going to be different and unique. It's really a matter of just being willing to have a look at, what they gave you and find what in it has benefited you. Heather Gibson says, clarifying reunion windows. Do Aries events trigger reunions such as certain planetary transits? No. It's not about Aries other than the counterparts met in Aries at this time. So Aries events won't trigger things. It's just that you need to focus on yourself. That's all. Nicole Huggins asks, when you say unconditional love is always return, is that generalized from collective, or can it be specific to past relationships that abused, wounded persons eventually return that unconditional love? Depends on the path, the person, the process, the cycle, right? You may offer the unconditional love, and that person may not live long enough. If they're really in a lot of suffering, they may exit the earth before they have a chance to return it to you. But it's just a basic law of life. And what's sown is what's returned, always. So you sow separation or blocking, that gets returned. You sow judgment and criticism, that gets returned. You sow love, that gets returned. Life always brings it back. And so I guess you could say generalized. Sometimes it could come from a person, sometimes it doesn't. Martha says, yes, anxiety, depression, and just diagnosed with ADHD. Dr. Daniel Almond's work and Dr. Mark Hyman's work will be a tremendous help for you. And I believe Daniel Almond specifically has books on depression and ADHD exclusively. Sun Honey Studio, my PTSD and anxiety was multiplied working for a psychologist for over a decade. Hopefully you've been able to heal. If you guys haven't already hit the like button, please do. And if you're guided to work with me through looking at your astrological chart, you can certainly book a reading with me over at kmoonastro.com. Link is below this video. The personal readings are there for you in November. I'm booking in November at this time. So if you'd like to have a look at how to work with the union energy going into 2024 based on your chart, we can certainly do that. Okay. All right. Thank you, Kylie. And thank you to Kat Bond, the moderators for the evening. You all have been wonderful. Thank you for making sure that people had what they needed. I really appreciate your time, dedication, and support. This video will remain here on YouTube for those who need it. And yeah, really grateful for all of you who were able to join live at such short notice. Hopefully, you found some messages that resonated for you, and know that every message wasn't for you. It just wasn't. There's other people here who might have needed to have heard something that resonated for them. Okay. So thank you for your grace and your patience and all of that. Love you all. Take great care and bye for now.